The clinking of silverware against fine china is usually a sound of celebration. But that night, it sounded like a countdown. My name is Elena, I am 48 years old, and for 25 years, I believed I had built a life defined by grace, resilience, and an unbreakable bond with my only daughter, Maya. I spent 2 decades curating a world where Maya wanted for nothing. Private tutors, ballet lessons, a debt-free college education, and a safety net so thick she never had to feel the hard ground of reality. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought I was protecting her. But as the snow drifted against the bay window of our dining room that Christmas Eve, I realized I hadn't been protecting her at all. I had been feeding a ghost. To my biggest regret, my 25-year-old daughter, who still refuses to grow up, and the mother who was too weak to make her. When those words left my lips, the room didn't just go silent. It turned cold. My husband, David, dropped his fork, the metal clattering against his plate like a gunshot. Maya, sitting across from me in a silk blouse I'd bought her just 2 days prior, froze with a piece of roasted potato halfway to her mouth. Her eyes, so much like mine, widened with a shock that quickly sharpened into a jagged, defensive anger. For years, I had swallowed my words, washing them down with glasses of expensive wine and forced smiles. But that night, the bitter taste of my own indulgence finally became too much to bear. To understand how a mother reaches the point of toasted betrayal at a Christmas dinner, you have to look at the quiet, mundane years that led us there. Our life in the suburbs was a picture of polished perfection. I worked as a senior editor for a lifestyle magazine, a job that required me to fix other people's narratives, to smooth out the rough edges of their stories until they were fit for public consumption. I brought that same energy home. When Maya was 10 and forgot her science project, I stayed up until 3 a.m. building a solar system so she wouldn't feel the sting of a failing grade. When she was 20 and dropped out of her first university because she couldn't find her tribe, I told her it was okay, that her mental health mattered more than a degree, and I paid the forfeited tuition without a second thought. By 25, Maya was a professional drifter. She lived in our finished basement, a space I decorated with soft linens and scented candles to make her feel inspired. She talked constantly about branding and finding her authentic voice. But her days usually began at noon and ended with a stack of delivery boxes she expected me to clear away. I'd come home from a 10-hour workday, my back aching and my eyes strained, only to find her lounging on the sofa, complaining that the organic milk I'd bought wasn't the right brand for her smoothies. "Mom, you just don't get the creative process," she'd say, her eyes glued to her phone. "I'm building something. It takes time." And I, the woman who made a living spotting lies in manuscripts, chose to believe her. I didn't want to be the mean mom. I didn't want to be the reason her spark went out. So I kept the credit card active. I kept the fridge full. I kept my mouth shut. David would sometimes try to intervene, his voice low and concerned in the dark of our bedroom. "Elena, she's nearly 30. She has no job, no savings, and no sense of responsibility. We aren't helping her. We're hobbling her." I would always turn away, pulling the duvet tighter. "She's just a late bloomer, David. The world is harder now than it was for us." But the cracks began to show in early December. It started with a small thing, a missing piece of jewelry, an emerald brooch my grandmother had left me. I searched the house for days, my heart sinking lower with every empty drawer. When I asked Maya about it, she didn't look up from her laptop. "I haven't seen it, Mom. Maybe you misplaced it. You've been so stressed lately." Her voice was calm, almost patronizing. But 2 days later, I saw a notification pop up on the shared family iPad she'd left on the kitchen island. It was an email from a local pawn shop, confirming a transaction for a vintage gold and emerald piece. My breath hitched. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a dull throb that synchronized with the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I didn't confront her immediately. I told myself there must be an explanation. Maybe she was in trouble? Maybe she was using the money for something important? The important thing arrived a week before Christmas. A designer handbag, delivered to the door in Maya's name. She swanned down the stairs, chirping about her investment piece for her upcoming brand launch. I stood in the kitchen, clutching a dish towel, watching her preen in front of the mirror with a bag that cost more than my grandmother's legacy. The resentment didn't arrive as a flood. It arrived as a slow, freezing drip. Every time I saw her move, the way she took the last of the coffee without making more, the way she left her laundry in the machine for me to fold, I felt a layer of my maternal patience vanish. On Christmas Eve, the house was filled with the scent of pine and rosemary. My sister and her husband were there, along with David's parents. The table was a masterpiece of my own making: linen napkins, silver chargers, a 3-course meal I'd spent 48 hours preparing. Maya sat there, the center of attention, weaving a grand tale about her upcoming projects and her need for a new studio space in the city. "It's just so hard to be creative in a basement," she sighed, sipping a wine that cost $80 a bottle. "I think if Mom and Dad could just help with the security deposit on that loft in the Arts District, my career would finally take off." My sister looked at me, her eyebrows raised in a silent question. David shifted uncomfortably, his eyes fixed on his turkey. Maya looked at me then, her expression expectant, her hand already reaching for the gravy boat as if it were her birthright. "Right, Mom? It's an investment in my future." That was the moment the silence broke. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I simply stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. I picked up my glass, the amber liquid trembling slightly. I looked at the daughter I had crafted into a parasite, and I looked at the woman in the mirror I no longer recognized. "I'd like to make a toast," I said. My voice was as steady as a heartbeat. The table went quiet. The fire crackled in the hearth. I looked directly into Maya's eyes, the eyes I had lied to myself for 25 years, and I delivered the sentence that would end our life as we knew it. To my biggest regret. The silence that followed my toast was heavy, like the air before a devastating storm. Maya's face went through a terrifying transformation, from confusion to embarrassment, and finally to a cold, hard mask of indignation. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. Instead, she set her wine glass down with a precise, lethal click. "How could you?" she whispered, her voice trembling not with sadness, but with the fury of someone whose supply had suddenly been cut off. "In front of everyone, you're supposed to support me, Mom. You're supposed to be on my side." "I have been on your side for 25 years, Maya," I replied, my voice dropping to a low, weary hum. "That's the problem. I've been on your side so much that I forgot how to stand on my own. I've been on your side while you lied to me, while you took from this house, and while you treated your father and me like an interest-free ATM." My sister tried to murmur something about settling this later, but I held up a hand. The dam had burst, and there was no rebuilding it tonight. I walked over to the sideboard and picked up a small, manila envelope I had hidden under a serving tray. I slid it across the table toward Maya. It bumped against her designer handbag. "What is this?" she hissed. "It's the first clue I chose to ignore," I said, "and the final proof I can't." Inside were the printouts from the pawn shop, a clear photo of her standing at the counter, handing over my grandmother's emerald brooch. Beside it was a log I had started keeping 3 months ago, a list of every loan, every emergency car repair, and every business expense I had covered. Totaled over $40,000 in the last year alone. The table gasped. My mother-in-law covered her mouth with a napkin. David looked at the papers, then at Maya, his face aging 10 years in a single second. The betrayal wasn't just the money. It was the calculated way she had used our love as a tool for her own comfort. "I was going to pay it back," Maya suddenly shouted, standing up so quickly her chair toppled over. "I just needed a head start. You have so much, Mom, and I have nothing. Why are you being so greedy over a piece of jewelry you never even wear?" That was the heart of it. To her, my life's work, my sacrifices, and even my memories were just resources for her to consume. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a provider. She saw her father as a safety net. She had no concept of the weight of the world because I had always carried the world for her. "Greed isn't wanting to keep what I earned, Maya," I said, standing my ground. Greed is taking what isn't yours because you feel entitled to a life you haven't worked for. You didn't just sell a brooch. You sold my trust. You sold the respect I had for you. Fine, she spat, grabbing her new handbag. If this is how you feel, I'm leaving. I don't need this. I don't need any of you. You'll be sorry when I'm successful and you're just two lonely old people in a big, empty house. She stormed out of the dining room, her footsteps thundering up the stairs to the basement. A few minutes later, we heard the front door slam so hard the ornaments on the Christmas tree shuddered. Then the roar of the car engine, the car I still paid the insurance on, fading into the distance. The dinner was over. My sister and the in-laws left shortly after, offering hushed, awkward comforts that felt like bandages on a gaping wound. When the house was finally empty, David and I sat in the kitchen. The festive lights were still twinkling, mocking the hollow feeling in my gut. "What now, Elena?" David asked, his voice cracking. I looked at the pile of dirty dishes, the remnants of a feast for a family that was now broken. "Now," I said, "we stop being her enablers. We change the locks. We cancel the cards. And we learn how to breathe again." The next morning, I didn't wake up at noon to the sound of Maya's music. I woke up at 6 a.m. The house was silent. I went down to the basement. It was a mess. Clothes strewn everywhere, empty takeout containers, the studio that never produced a single piece of work. I began to pack her things into boxes. It wasn't an act of malice. It was an act of necessity. With every item I folded, I felt a strange, painful peeling of my own skin. I was shedding the version of myself that lived to please a child who didn't exist anymore. 2 days later, the public consequence arrived. Maya had posted a long, tearful video on her social media, accusing us of financial abuse and kicking her out in the snow on Christmas. She expected a wave of sympathy. She expected her friends and our extended family to turn against us, to pressure us into apologizing and opening our checkbooks again. But the truth has a funny way of standing tall. My sister, who had seen the pawn shop papers, commented calmly on the post with a single sentence. "The truth is in the emeralds, Maya. We all saw the receipts." The narrative she had tried to build crumbled. Her followers began to ask questions. Her friends, who she had also borrowed money from, started coming forward. The golden girl was being seen for what she really was. A master of illusion who had run out of mirrors. The fallout was a slow, agonizing burn. For weeks, the silence in the house was a physical weight. I would find myself standing in the kitchen, reaching for a third mug for a daughter who wasn't there, or pausing at the top of the basement stairs before remembering there was no one to wake up. Maya didn't call. She didn't text to apologize. Instead, she sent a flurry of Venmo requests for essential expenses, which I declined one by one, with a shaking hand and a heavy heart. True justice isn't always a courtroom drama. Sometimes, it's just the quiet arrival of reality. Deprived of our financial cushioning, Maya had to face the world she had mocked for so long. We heard through the grapevine that she was working back-to-back shifts at a local diner. A menial job she once claimed was beneath her creative soul. She moved into a cramped apartment with 3 roommates. There was no loft in the arts district, and there were no more designer handbags. The public consequence wasn't just the loss of her reputation. It was the loss of the fantasy she had lived in. As for me, the healing didn't come in a sudden wave of relief. It came in small, quiet increments. I spent that first spring planting a garden in the backyard, not for a summer party or to impress neighbors, but for the simple, grounded joy of watching something grow that I didn't have to carry. David and I started talking again, not about Maya's problems, but about us. We rediscovered the people we were before we became full-time crisis managers for a 25-year-old child. One afternoon, a small package arrived in the mail. It was a padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a cheap, plastic keychain with a picture of a sunrise and a handwritten note. I sold the bag. It didn't cover the brooch, but it's a start. I'm tired of being a regret. Maya, I sat on the porch and cried. They weren't tears of sadness. but tears of a mother who finally saw a glimmer of the person her daughter could actually become. Not through indulgence, but through struggle. I didn't call her. I didn't send money. I simply tucked the note into my journal and went back to my garden. Some seeds need the frost to crack their shells before they can truly bloom. I look back at that Christmas dinner now, and I don't see a tragedy. I see a rescue mission. I had to lose my daughter to help her find herself, and I had to break my own heart to save my soul. Setting boundaries with the people we love is the hardest thing we will ever do, but it is also the greatest act of love we can offer. We aren't doing them any favors by lying to them about how the world works. Would you have the courage to give that toast if it meant saving the person you love most? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories of strength help us all feel a little less alone. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Broken Trust Stories for more journeys through the heart of the family. Until next time, stay strong and keep your heart open to the truth.